everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. Today we're looking back at the hot comics from October 22nd, 2021, and I'm recording this on April 21st, 2022. As always, I give those dates so you know when this information is actually relevant, because this market is always moving and changing, and it doesn't take long. So, as always, we're also looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. Those are the two lists that I pick. There's now, seems like a ton of lists. Back when I first started doing this, there really wasn't that many hot comic lists, but it feels like there's like 6, 7, 8 now. But those are the two that I've been looking at now for just over 3 years, of what are the hot books and seeing how they perform for that 6-month period after they're hot. So, and I do this so that we all have a better idea of what books we should chase, what factors actually have sustainability versus what things cause books to flash and then drop back. So we make better decisions about the books that we chase. So without further ado, let's get into the list because we've got 19 books to talk about. First up, we have something a little different than normal. We got a hardcover. This is Something is Killing the Children, the deluxe edition hardcover with the slipcase. This was a little bit limited in the initial order, so people were going crazy. I think they've sent out more of these, but the result was then when it first came out, people were going nuts for this. It was $125 to $150 for this hardcover. Now, I would say as hardcovers go out of print, they tend to do well on the secondary market, but this one at this point has dropped back considerably. So despite the fact that omnis and that kind of stuff usually are pretty popular on the secondary market, this one, at least in the short-term 6-month period, has dropped back to $50 to $100 for this hardcover. So it definitely turned into a trap as it's going for basically half of what it was back when it first came out. But I would say there's probably a decent long-term market on this one anyway. Next, we're going to move into some comic books, and we got Uncharted #1. We got the trailer for the movie. The movie has come and gone, and back then it caused this first comic related to the Uncharted game to go for $60 plus. Now with the movie come and gone, it's a $20 to $30 book again. So this one definitely turned into a trap. Not unusual for a movie adaptation of a comic, of a video game or that kind of stuff. The comics usually fall back pretty hard once the movie comes and goes. Next, we're going to move into our covers. We only had 4 covers this week, but the first one is Gunslinger Spawn #1. This is one of the 1 in 250 Todd McFarlane signed variants that he signed every one of them. Most of back then when they were first coming out, these were going for $550 to $650. Most of these have now been slabbed if you look on the secondary market. And the slab 9.8s are going for $500 to $700. So basically in the exact range the raw copies were going for back then. There was one recent raw sale that was for $600. So this one pretty much just falls in that steady worth it category. Even though the 9.8s are going for the price the raws were, overall, yeah, the value's just right in that same range. So, pretty worth it. This has been pretty consistent with these Todd McFarlane signed variants that he did for all the new Spawn universe stuff. They all ended up sitting in this $500, $600, maybe $700 range. That's been pretty consistent for these on the secondary market. They usually start a little higher, but this has been pretty consistent of where they've ended up. Next, we have a repeat offender from last week. We have Philadelphia #12, the Todd McFarlane variant. So he's on the list twice this week. This one, back then, this book was going for $35.40. Now, and a 9.8 was going for $110. Now it's a $15, $30 book. Like I talked about last week. The most recent 9.8 sale is still just $70. We talked about that last week, even though a recent 9.6 went for more at $90. So this one has definitely turned into a bit of a trap compared to what it was back then when people were definitely chasing this McFarlane variant. Our next cover this week is Phoenix Song, Echo #1. This is the Oscar Vega 1 in 25. And this 1 in 25 was going for $40 to $50 at release, which I usually tell you means it's going to fall back to just above ratio because it wasn't even really going above double. And now it's a 25 to 80, so there's a really wide range on these. The one 9.8 sale is 150. So this one's actually done a little better than typically for these 125s that don't go higher than, don't get up around triple. But you can still get it for under double ratio. So I just kind of put this as steady and worth it. It held a little more around that $40, $50 range for the most part, but it hasn't really went crazy either. So our last cover that we're going to talk about this week is Gun Honey #1. This is the second print. So this is kind of the version of a first print that had the trade dress of the same cover. Back then, raw copies of this were going for $25 plus. Now it's a $5 to $20 book. 9.8 only costs you $40 to $75. So this one definitely turned into a bit of a trap. This market for this Gun Honey series has been kind of weird. We've had a bunch of covers that hit it back then. A couple of them have done okay. A couple of them have not. I don't know that the series really amounted to much other than sexy covers. So with that, we're going to move into some DC fandom news that sparked a couple of books to hit the list this week back then. First up, we have Blood Syndicate #1. This hit the list because we got more news about Milestone Comics returning, which they have done now. We've been getting some static books. I think we're getting an Icon book. I don't know if we've gotten a Blood Syndicate book yet or not. I don't know. But a lot of this has been online as well as just actual hard copies. Back then, though, Blood Syndicate was going for $5, but it was just lots of sales in this book that there's a lot of. 9.8 hit 140. Now it's 1 to 10 for raw copies. 9.8, 60 to 100. So this turned into an I'll Be Back. No real reason to have went and chased this one. It's fairly steady, but it was $5. So it's just, this was an I'll Be Back. You can still get this pretty much for cover price basically forever, it seems like. So next, our other DC fandom was DC Festival of Heroes, Asian Superhero Celebration #1. This is the 1 in 25 Monkey Prince design variant. This is the first appearance of the Monkey Prince was in there, and this was with the announcement of a 12-issue Monkey Prince series coming, maxi series coming. Back then caused raw copies to jump to $40 to $55. Now that series has started coming out, and raw copies are sitting at $50 to $100 for this book. So this one is actually up, but most of those sales came back in March and late February when the first issue was coming out. There's only really been one sale period in April, and it was down on the lower end toward the $50 mark. So this book might be starting to back up a little bit now that we've gotten away from the initial release of the series. So right now it's still saying up, but based on the most recent sales, but there hasn't really been many of those. So next we got Shazam #28, first modern appearance of Black Adam. We got a little bit of a teaser for Black Adam back at Fandom. This caused the 9.8 to hit an all-time high of 7,000, the 9.2 to hit 1,300. No recent 9.8 sales, but the most recent 9.2 was down around 800. Raw copies are set in 1 to 500 depending on condition. So this one's definitely turned into an I'll Be Back. We've gotten some more news. We know we're getting Black Adam fairly soon, but it was definitely backed up from the buzz around the little teaser that came out at Fandom. With that, we have one more DC book before we move into Spiders and MCU stuff, and that is Batman 405, and that is the first appearance of Carmine Falcone, and that was news related to around the Batman, which has already come out since then. So back then, raw copies were jumping up to $10 to $15. 9.8 was hitting 200 to $225. So I will say, most recent sales on this are back down in the $10 to $30 range. 9.8 back down around 200. Already, even though around the time the movie came out, month and a half ago, a little over, early March, we were seeing sales, raw copies around $50 consistently. 9.8's over 300. Books already backed up. Just in the 2 months since the movie, that's how quickly this market things back off. Overall, this one's steady and worth it compared to 6 months ago, but it hasn't really been steady. It peaked much higher when the movie actually came out, and now it is backing up rapidly, back to kind of where it's always been, which is the second book of that year one storyline, which has always had a little bit of value with the first appearance of Merkel, Carmine Falcone, and Sarah Essen. So there's 3 actual Batman characters that first appear in this book. So with that, we're going to move into a little Sony side of the Marvel, the Spiders stuff. And this is Amazing Spider-Man 569. It hit the list because this is the first appearance of Anti-Venom, and Anti-Venom was hinted at during the second Venom movie. So that's what caused this book to hit the list. Raw copies were going for 100 plus. 9.8 hit 300. Most recent 9.8 sale was still 300, but raw copies, which is most of the sales here, are 40 to 100 for this A cover. Really, it's the Granoff and the second print are the more wanted covers of this particular first appearance. But this one definitely turned into an I'll be back of this A cover of the first appearance of Anti-Venom. With that, it's all MCU stuff the rest of the way. So we got like 7 MCU related books. First up was just rumors, and this was World War Hulk #1, and rumors swirling that this is, if they ever do a Hulk movie, that this is going to be the storyline. We've heard this for, I feel like, the better part of a decade. But back then this book was 15 to 60, like it was peaking out at $60 for raw copies. Now it's a $10 to $30 raw book. 9.8 sitting around 90 to 140. So this is definitely turned into I'll be back. We still don't know if we're ever going to get another Hulk movie or not. His rights are kind of mixed up with Universal, so it's a little bit hard for them to actually make Hulk movies. That's why he just appears in theirs, and he doesn't get to be titled. But yeah, so we'll see if we ever actually get one. And I know sounds like there's delays with the She-Hulk show, so yeah, who knows when we're going to actually get more Hulk. Next, we have Rogue #1. So basically, this hit the list. This is the first solo series for Rogue, and this hit the list because someone on YouTube said, hey, first solos are doing really well with people that are coming to the MCU. Why isn't this first solo Rogue doing well? And it's undervalued, and it caused it to jump up to a $10 to $15 book of all things. And that's just partially because of the print run of this early 90s book, or mid 90s, I guess, technically. 9.8 was all the way up to 70, and now it's a $1 to $20 book. It's been 9.8 sitting 80 to 150, so the 9.8s have kind of moved up a little bit, but the raw copies, which again are the vast majority of sales, are just basically sitting in the same range. You can it's kind of an I'll be back. You can just go find this book in dollar bins somewhere. You can find this book for pretty cheap. No reason to necessarily chase it. Next, we have Jungle Action #7, the second appearance of Killmonger, and people are still we're still commenting on the fact that, with Chadwick gone, that we might get more of Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger, even though he supposedly died, that he was going to come back. Maybe he'd be the Black Panther. So with this, they were starting to chase the second appearance. Raw copies were up to $25 on average. 9.6 hit 185. Now, no recent slab sales that I could find on eBay, at least. Raw copies are setting 5 to 30, so definitely an I'll be back for the most part on raw copies. Although 2 really high-grade raw copies went for like 80 and just over 100. So there were a couple higher sales, but they were definitely outliers compared to the rest of the market on this. So overall, this is definitely kind of an I'll be back. All right, still, 5 MCU books left because we had 19 books this week. We got Ghost Rider #33. So basically, this was rumors from a site that doesn't really have a lot of credibility that was claiming that we will get some version of Ghost Rider and Doctor Strange. Good grief, how many things are they going to cram into this movie? I don't think we're probably going to get this, but who knows? But this has had multiple first appearances in this book, including Ghost Riders of Tomorrow and stuff. So that's why this book was kind of hitting the list. Raw copies jumped all the way up to 75 plus. Now it's a $25 to $50 book. So if you're getting it on the lower end, maybe it's still now would be a decent time to invest in case something happens with one of these versions. But overall, this definitely turned into a trap from the craziness of people going, oh, some sort of Ghost Rider is going to appear. Let's have all their first appearances. Next, we have Kitty Pryde and Wolverine #1. This hit the list because it's the first appearance of Ogun, Ogun. I don't know how you pronounce that, but it's a character people thought might be one of the characters in the Hit Monkey trailer for the Hulu show, so that's why people were chasing this. One of those Tom Key Collector books that they put on the list mostly because of the number of sales. It was only going for $5. This is a pretty easy book to find in back issues as well. Pretty high print on this. 9.8 was going for $140, or topped out at $140. Now it's still a $5 to $10 book. 9.8, $60 to $90. But yeah, this is a pretty easy book to find, like I said, and definitely an I'll be back. There was no reason to rush out and get it. You could get this pretty much for $5 anytime. All right, 3 books left, and next up we have Captain Marvel #27. The first appearance of Eros, and who later becomes Star Fox. This had to do with the Eternals movie and his little cameo at the end. Sorry for the spoilers. So this character makes a cameo. Back then, caused raw copies of this book to jump up to $125. Now, raw copies are set in $20 to $120. With most high-grade copies still around the $100 mark, but definitely down overall. Another I'll be back. So yeah, then this was week of the movie release, so there were spoilers in this that people were talking about. But yeah, so this one's definitely backed up. We'll see what we get from the Eternals. I know that movie didn't get quite the response I'm sure Marvel was hoping for. So we'll see if we get how many of these characters we continue to get. Next, we have more related to Star Fox. We have Avengers 232, where Eros gets the name Star Fox and joins the Avengers. Back then, raw copies were $40 to $50. A 9.8 went for $700, and then the next one went for $950, which is really high prices. Now it's a $15 to $40 book. 9.8 going for $350. So yeah, this is probably where I should have put my dumpster fire thing. I called this a trap, but that 9.8 of $950 down to $350 is woof. Not good if you chase that particular book. But yeah, it definitely dropped way back. We'll see what, if any, we get of Star Fox going forward. Then our last book, also related to Star Fox, and this one's just a weird spec. This is She-Hulk #6. This is basically, if you know anything about Star Fox and his powers, he kind of has the ability to attract, basically in this book, he's accused of using his powers to seduce women. So he basically goes on trial for sexual assault. She-Hulk's the lawyer involved. Anyway, this book was $30 to $40 because people were like, well, we're getting a She-Hulk show. Maybe this will be a storyline, which I cannot imagine Marvel ever doing on any sort of TV, given the way the nature of the environment has changed, even if he comes off looking bad. Yeah. Now raw copies are down to $15 to $30, but still going for value. But this is still definitely turned into a trap. So that is our list for this week. 19 books. And once again, all but one of them either stayed steady or dropped, and the vast majority of them dropped. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time.